The essay Tolerance, written by E.M. Forster. Let's understand the complete text of the essay. Before we start reading the essay, we must understand that E.M. Forster wrote this essay when Second World War began, and he wanted that there should be no Second World War. And for that purpose, he wrote the essay Tolerance, which can be the very good virtue people should observe. But at that time, all the countries and cities were busy in reconstruction. They were busy in rebuilding. May it be London, may it be England, may it be Western civilization. And they were making their plans how this is to be done. Which is all very well. E.M. Forster says that it's okay when we are trying for our safety. But when I hear such talks, when I see the architects, when I see the contractors, they are making their estimates, they are giving statements, they are showing their influence, that how they can strengthen the country. And everyone getting down to the job, everyone is busy in doing this task. But E.M. Forster says that at that time, famous text comes to my mind, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain who build it. Means until we have right state of mind, right thinking, sound state of mind, there is no use building, rebuilding, reconstruction or strengthening our infrastructure. Beneath the poetic imagery of these words lies a hard scientific truth. In fact, E.M. Forster wants to tell the scientific truth, namely, unless you have a sound attitude of mind, a right psychology, you can't construct or reconstruct anything that will endure. Means whatever you do, it won't last for long until we have sound state of mind, sound attitude of mind. This text is really true not only for religious people but for all workers. Their outlook is very important. Here he gives the example of Dr. Arnold Toynbee, who prefaced his great study of the growth and decay of civilizations. He was a good historian and he says that civilizations, he says that until sound foundation is there for a civilization, means sound state of mind, only then it can last for long. Architects, contractors, international commissioners, marketing boards, broadcasting corporations will never by themselves build a new world. Only these people can't build new world until we have sound state of mind. They must be inspired by the proper spirit. Proper thinking is required. There must be proper spirit in the people for whom they are working. Means all the people have sound state of mind. What though is the proper spirit? This is what he talks about. What is this? Here he tells there must be a sound state of mind before diplomacy or economics or trade conferences can function. Whatever we want to execute properly, so first we should have right approach. And may it be economics, may it be diplomacy, everywhere it would work then well. But what state of mind is sound? Here again the question mark, that what is that can we said that it is sound? Here we may differ. Here people have different opinions. Most people, when asked what spiritual quality is needed to rebuild civilization, will reply love, because most of the people think that love is the only force, sound state of mind, right spirit, and when we love others, then there would be no war. Men must love one another, they say. Nations must do likewise. And then the series of cataclysms which is threatening to destroy us will be checked. They say that may it be nation, may it be individual, and they should love each other. Only then there would be no threat to any nation or individual. Respectfully but firmly I disagree. Here E.M. Forster disagrees. He says that love is a great force, but it is only in private life. It is indeed the greatest of all things. He agrees that it is a greatest thing, but love in public affairs does not work, and it's a matter of public affair between the nation, between different organizations. It has been tried again and again by the Christian civilizations of the Middle Ages and also by the French Revolution. So every time it has been tried, but it failed. A secular movement which reasserted the brotherhood of man. Because love has not worked in the past also. Here two examples have been given. One of Christian civilization and the other is of French Revolution. And it has always failed. The idea that nations should love one another, or that business concerns or marketing boards should love one another, this idea of loving one another will not work. Or that a man in Portugal should love a man in Peru of whom he has never heard. It is absurd, unreal, dangerous, because the person when we have never heard, we have never seen, we cannot think of loving. And this idea of loving him is an absurd idea, it's unreal idea, and it's very dangerous idea. It leads us into perilous and vague sentimentalism. He believes that is it not just only perilous idea, vague idea, which cannot work at all. Love is what is needed. We chant and then we sit back and the world goes on as before. Just some people talk of that love is required, but when we see it does not work, but they have no other idea to talk about. The fact is we can only love what we know personally. Here E.M. Forster says that when we know anything personally, then we can think of loving. And we cannot know much. As we can't know everybody, that's why we can't love everybody. In public affairs, when it's a matter of public, in the rebuilding of civilization, something much less dramatic and emotional is needed, namely tolerance. Now he gives the idea, suggestion that not love, that is the tolerance. Although I agree that it is less dramatic, it's less emotional, but tolerance is much better than love that we should follow. Tolerance is a very dull virtue. E.M. Forster says that I agree, it's very dull, not so fascinating, it's boring also. Unlike love, it has always had a bad press, it is negative. Everybody thinks that tolerance is a negative virtue. It merely means putting up with people. Means here what does it mean? We have to put up, we have to tolerate, we have to bear, we have to endure. Being able to stand things. If somebody does something wrong, we have to just tolerate. No one has ever written an ode to tolerance or raised a statue to her. Nobody has ever talked about in poetry or in public life. Yet this is the quality which will be most needed after the war. Here there should be no war, or after the war again there should be peace. Then we need the quality of tolerance. This is the sound state of mind. Tolerance, E.M. Forster says, is the sound state of mind which we are looking for. Really we need this quality. This is the only force which will enable different races and classes and interests to settle down together to the work of reconstruction. Because whatever we are talking of rebuilding or reconstruction, our interests, races, classes, everything would be safe when we follow the policy of tolerance. The world is full of people, appallingly full. There are so many people in the world. It has been never so full before. In the past, there were not so many people and they are all tumbling over each other. Most of these people one doesn't know. Most of the people we don't know. That's why we can't think of loving them. And some of them one doesn't like. There are many whom we don't like. There are many, their skin colors we don't like, or the shapes of their noses, or the way they blow them or don't blow them. There are many who blow their nose. There are many who don't blow. Maybe whatever they are doing we may not like. Or the way they talk, or their smell, or their clothes, or their fondness for jazz, or their dislike of jazz, and so on. Well, what is one to do? Because he is giving the example of so many different situations, we may not like their ways, styles, habits, attitude, tastes. Then what should we do? There are two solutions, as he has talked about so many problems, and one of them is the Nazi solution. One solution, Nazi solution: if you don't like people, kill them, banish them, segregate them, and then start up and down proclaiming that you are the salt of the earth. Means this is the one way. As the Nazis did in Germany, they killed the people like Jews when they didn't like them. The other way is much less thrilling, but it is on the whole the way of the democracies, and I prefer it. Here E.M. Forster says the other way is of democracies, which he talks of, that is of tolerance, and he himself prefers this way. If you don't like people, put up with them as well as you can. Don't try to love them. You can't. You'll only stain yourself. He says that there are differences, and as you don't like the habits of others, and you have to tolerate, you have to bear, and don't stain yourself. And I know that you can't love them because you don't like them, but the only solution is that you bear them. But try to tolerate them. On the basis of that tolerance, a civilized future may be built. Only civilized future can be built when you tolerate them. Certainly, I can see no other foundation for the post-war world. He says that is the only thing that is required in post-war world that can work wonderfully. For what it will most need is the negative virtues, because many people regard tolerance as the negative virtue, not being huffy, touchy, irritable, revengeful, because you don't show any reaction when you don't like. Don't be touchy, don't be irritable, and don't be revengeful. I have lost all faith in positive militant ideals. He says that I don't believe militant ideals can work. They can so seldom be carried out without thousands of human beings getting maimed or imprisoned, because militant ideals means when we kill thousands of people, or we injure them, we maim them or imprison them, and this is the way that can't work in bringing peace to the world. Phrases like I will purge this nation, I will clean up this city, terrify and disgust me. E.M. Forster says that as some people claim that they will purge the nation or clean up the city, means everything they would write. These things terrify him, these things disgust him, because E.M. Forster strongly believes that these things can never work. They might not have mattered when the world was so emptier, when there were not so many people in the past. These things would not have mattered, but these days it's not possible because the world is overpopulated. They are horrifying now. When one nation is mixed up with another, when one city cannot be organically separated from its neighbors, means there are so many cities, so many nations, and they are really attached to each other, intimated to each other. They cannot be segregated or separated. That's why it is not possible now, because we have to change our strategy, that is of tolerance. I don't then regard tolerance as a great internally established divine principle, though I might perhaps quote, in my father's house are many mansions, in support of such a view. He says that tolerance may not be eternally established a divine principle, but I must say that my father's house are many mansions, means in support of such argument view, because he says that this is the only way that we should go for tolerance. It is just a makeshift suitable for an overcrowded and overheated planet. Now our planet is overheated and overcrowded, and this is the makeshift arrangement for maintaining peace in the world. It carries on when love gives out, and love generally gives out as soon as we move away from our home and our friends and stand among strangers in a queue for potatoes. When we move away from our friends, our home, then love does not work. When we are standing in a queue among strangers, love does not work. Tolerance is wanted in the queue. In the queue, we require tolerance. Otherwise, we think, why will people be so slow? Because many things irritate us, like why people are so slow. It is wanted in the tube. Tube is underground metro in England. Oh, why will people be so fat? These things disliked by us or irritate us. We don't like these things. It is wanted at the telephone. Tolerance is required even everywhere, like we hear the example of telephone also. Why are they so deaf? Why people can't hear? Or Conversely, why do they mumble? Why they talk so low? It is wanted in the street. Even in street also we require, in the office we require, at the factory we require, and it is wanted above all between classes, races and nations. He says that tolerance is required everywhere in all situations because there are so many things which we don't like, which irritate us. It is dull. E.M. Forster says that really tolerance is a dull virtue, and yet it entails imagination, and it requires imagination also. For you have all the time to be putting yourself in someone else's place, which is a desirable spiritual exercise. For using tolerance, E.M. Forster says that every time you have to put up yourself in other person's situation, place, in their shoes, from their perspective, viewpoint, you have to think of the same. Otherwise, you would get irritated, and that is the requirement, that you have to imagine in other person's situation. Tolerance is not the same as weakness, and don't equate tolerance with weakness. It is not the weakness. Putting up with people does not mean giving in to them. It does not mean also that you surrender to them. This complicates the problem. Otherwise, you would make it complicated. In fact, tolerance is a good virtue and it should not be equated with weakness or surrendering to others. But the rebuilding of civilization is bound to be complicated. Otherwise, when we don't have tolerance as virtue with us, then building or rebuilding of civilization would really get complicated. I only feel certain that unless the Lord builds the house, they will labor in vain who build it. Until we have right state of mind, right spirit, sound state of mind, then it would be useless to build anything. Perhaps when the house is completed, love will enter it, and the greatest force in our private lives will also rule in public life. Here again E.M. Forster says that when this process is completed, when tolerance is adopted, then at later stage love will enter it, and this is the greatest force in private lives, and that would come in public life also, but beginning has to be done with tolerance. Thank you.